Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome, I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today became a passionate story writer when her third grade teacher, Mrs. Hayes, encouraged her to read aloud her imaginings. Her classmates were polite and surprisingly attentive. No hecklers doused the fires of invention that smoldered inside her. Mrs. Hayes didn't realize that she started my guest on a path that forged her love of books and writing. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Temple University, a master's degree, and a doctorate from the University of Cincinnati. Informally, she explored her interest in the fields of art and design, which led to the establishment of an interior design consulting business and an art gallery with a friend. Currently, she devotes the majority of her days to reading and writing short stories and novels, favoring the genres of romance and women's fiction. Her first novel, And Now There's You, draws heavily on her art and design experiences. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Susan Etkin.
Hi there, Julia.
Susan, our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, so what took you so long to write a book?
Well, I must say that as a child, I wrote books for myself or my parents. But this came about in part of my life where I had more time. And therefore, I sat down. I had been a widow for about a year. And I thought, well, now I'm going to put time into my passion. And my character is a widow. So a lot of me is in this book. Now, previously, I was an academic. So I did write a dissertation, which is considered to be a book. But it just sort of was something that stirred inside of me. It was sort of a catharsis for me, I think, at that time in my life. And Now There's You came about. I had a cousin, Adrienne, who was very encouraging, and she kept editing and reading with, she was a reader for me. And it took a while. It took a couple of years really to get it to completion, but I'm glad I did it. And I wanted people to see that something good could come out of something bad. And so that's where I am. I've done a lot of academic writing, obviously, teaching at the high school and college level. But this was sort of going back to third grade and able to create a very nice and enticing and entertaining story, which I think people have found it to be.
Well, once you wrote the book, how did you proceed? Did you search for an agent, decide to use a hybrid, a small press, or did you self-publish?
I worked with Sparks Press, which is a hybrid publisher. I didn't do that initially. Initially, I did buy a lot of the books like Writer's Market and things like that were related to the publishing field, because I really had no idea about what was involved in writing a book and getting it to market. I knew about marketing from my business, but not about this area of marketing that dealt with literature. And therefore, that's really what I did. And then I really began writing way before I started sending out inquiry letters and things like that. But this same cousin told me about a friend of hers, a Feller Vassar Nye, who had published a book with Sparks Press. And so I submitted the finished manuscript to them, and that's how it went out. It's a very competitive field. There are millions of books being sold all over the world, and it's really quite difficult to break into it. But luckily, I wasn't looking at it to support myself. I was looking at it as a personal adventure into the literary field. And so that's the way that worked out.
I definitely think we have to have love and passion for this industry because it's quite humbling.
Yes, it is. It is. I had no idea. I was a real novice. I thought, oh, you write a book, it's accepted, and bam, it's a hit seller. But that's not the way it goes. But that wasn't really my goal. I was just trying to go through with this character, Lila. So much of me is in this character, and a number of the experiences were mine, actually. And they were friends who told me stories about what it was like losing their mate of many years, and how they tried to think, how could they think of themselves with another person, and so forth and so on, and then the complications of children who want to protect you, and so forth and so on. So it was a great learning experience. It really was.
Well, it sounds like there's a thread of memoir running through your book, but you've turned it into fiction. So, how did you determine the plot of your book?
Well, when I'm in the process of writing a second book, and a third book is outlined. But my process is, I just see a movie script just flash right across my forehead, and the scenes just come, and I see the story in about 5 minutes or so, which is flat. It could be while I'm driving a car, it could be while I'm waiting in a doctor's office or something, but it's just a flash of an idea of a story. And most successful stories are ones that are very close to you. So I decided, well, let me take my experience as an art and design consultant. I worked with many wonderful craftsmen and craftswomen. Let me think of experiences I had in the past and sort of bring that into this storyline, and always with a romance, which is my favorite genre. There is a happy ending. So I knew that my character was going to find someone, or it would suggest strongly at the end of the book that she had found someone and that would move forward in a positive direction. So that's basically how I do it.
So, are your next two books going to be a series? Are they connected to the first book?
No, they are not connected. They are individual stories. They both have happy romantic endings, but of course, always with the romance, there's lots of complications that are thrown in the path of the heroine. And she might, we know that she will, the promise of a romance is at the end she will succeed, but she has to go through a lot of stumbling blocks. And so they're completely different. They're different characters, there's different situations. There's a shooting in this one that I'm working on now, the second one, where the love interest of the protagonist, his life is threatened, and therefore there's that kind of thought that, oh, maybe this won't be a happy ending, but it does have a happy ending.
Well, now that you're writing full time, what is your writing routine? Are you a morning person or a night person?
Well, I have to say, Julia, that it's when the spirit moves me. So, and what my day is like with other obligations, but I have to really have that feeling that I want to get in there into the manuscript and elaborate on it and move forward. And I do take notes when I'm done a session of writing, that where I want to go next time, where it's just little reminders to me that that's where I want to go with the storyline. And it just seems to open up fine and move along. And this first book, And Now There's You, was a little over 300 pages, and this second book is going to that in that direction too. Will probably be in that area. And right now, I am maybe 2/3 of the way through it, and I might approach a little bit differently. I might submit it to contests first. And see what kind of feedback I get. And contests have literary agents and publishers who are the evaluators. So I might do that as opposed to going right into another Sparks Press experience. But and I'll take a little time for that, to make sure that and then in those kinds of submissions, you get feedback from these people. And they'll tell you where they think you've gone awry, or what you need to do to enhance a section of the book, or things like that. So that's very helpful, and it's free advice, basically, because the submission price is very nominal. But that's what I think I might try a little bit differently before I go straight to that hybrid publishing, because if you have to wait for that publisher to embrace you. And if they don't embrace you, then that Sparks Press is a wonderful alternative, because that's a partner. You partner with them. But I'd like to try it a little bit differently now and see if I can just travel a slightly different road to get to where I want to be.
Well, and also you can go to conferences where you can be paired with agents and you can pitch your work to them.
That is true. That is another alternative, and I will note that. But I'm not finished it yet, so I have a little bit of time to think about it. And of course, there's always my cousin, who I miss her. She moved to, by the way, she lives in Houston. Yeah, she moved to Houston, so I might visit her soon. But I always bounce ideas off of her. And her husband, who has written a play, I believe, and he's also written a book. I don't think they're out there yet, but he's also, into this world. And so I bounce things off of both of them, and I'm glad that they are there to help me along.
Well, can you describe the editing process that you chose for the first book and even the second?
Well, with And Now There's You, I would write a number of chapters, and then I would give them to this cousin I've mentioned. Recently, I purchased a book on self-editing for fiction writers. Now, I'm an English teacher, so I have a good background in your grammar and your things like that. What I need is, did I write too much? Is there not enough dialogue? Am I telling, or is my character doing? Do I want her to be more active when she was going about her life? So that is something that I've gone a little bit more to the self-help area and going back and going through checklists. Now, I did go to a number of events. I joined a local Romance Writers of America chapter. I went to a lot of their presentations where writers talked about exactly what we're talking about today, and methods or of success for them that they would like to share with other authors. So I have done that. I haven't necessarily left Bluebell, Pennsylvania area. I've not done that. Of course, COVID came in. COVID sort of kept us, places. But so I'm open to. I like self-help books. I like to underline areas that I think speak to me and that kind of thing. So that's how I sort of approach the editing. And lots of times when I'm writing, I'll read a few pages back from where I'm going to begin. And I catch things myself where I go, oh, why did I choose that word? I don't like that. And so I do self-check before I move forward. And then I read it over and over again myself and change things, or look for a different word, or eliminate discussion, or you're always moving back a few steps before you move forward. And then, of course, when I get to the end, then it's another from the beginning to the end of myself. And then I will go, I will definitely, editors are wonderful. They see things that you just don't even realize and suggest things that you never even thought of. So it definitely has to be edited. A book must be edited.
Well, that's so true for me. I'm an English major as well, but I can sit down and take your manuscript and find all of your mistakes. But on my own work, because I've looked at it for so long, I miss, all the duplicate words, and I have to read out loud to hear it. That helps me find some of my own mistakes.
That's wonderful about the computer. You can highlight and have it read back to you, and you sort of can sit back and be an audience for yourself. And that's very helpful. Yes.
Well, Susan, why don't you tell us a little bit more about this first book and then read from it so that we can hear your tone and voice in the book?
Okay. Well, this is a romance. It has a very strong female character. She is an independent career woman. She has always been. She was previously married to a lawyer who she unfortunately lost to cancer, which is me, because that's exactly what happened to my husband. He wasn't a lawyer, he was an engineer, but he had prostate cancer. Unfortunately, he died from that. So that's very me in the book. And she has, after that loss, she has gone about her life in her field and her business and her children, and that has occupied most of her time. And she has had no thought of romance. She had thought that area of her life was over, and she was just going to be a great mother and in the future a grandmother. She's a friend, and she went through her life like that. And then in the book, she takes an assignment. She meets a new client, and there at the client's home is this character, Aiden, who is a very accomplished man. He is a craftsman, an architect, a sculptor. He can do anything with he's very visual and artistic and definite. And he has been single for 25 years. And he has had a number of girlfriends or relationships, but they have never panned out, basically because he didn't want to become a father and so forth and so on. And she meets this guy, and he's not very receptive that the client has hired a design consultant along with him, because he is everything. He is a designer, he is an architect, he's an artist, and he sort of doesn't see how this woman needs to be in this relationship with the client. And he's a little bit obstinate, and so they have sort of a fiery beginning. And then it develops from there, that they start to see each other as that they're a good team, that they temper each other, that they encourage each other, that they inspire each other. And as the story goes along, she starts to fall for him, even though he has not a great history with women. He's not the kind of man that she would normally want, someone that you could build a life with, because she's only in her 50s. And another thing is that a lot of the romance books are about 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds, and I don't even know, some might get up near 40, but they're never about the woman who is in her over 50. And there are many attractive, very successful, very talented women over 50 that are out there. And I wanted her to be one of those kind of people, that your life isn't over once you get to 50. So that goes on for quite some time. And in that story, I interweave situations that I had myself, because prior to COVID, I was encouraged to go on these matchmaking a matchmaking site. And some of these experiences are experiences that I have, which I think are somewhat comical. Some are a little thorny, but that I wove in, plus stories that I had from friends and even family members who had lost a husband or were divorced or whatever. They were alone in the world over 50. And I wove that into the story because they were real life experiences. I wasn't just making them up because it's a fiction book. And then that's how that sort of the story evolved. And then at the end, of course, he starts to realize, I think I'd like to spend the rest of my life with this woman. She is so talented and makes me a better man, even though I thought I couldn't be a better man, and that's how it works out. And at the end, at the end of the story, he comes around. And so I have mostly feedback from women who have read the book, but one of my friend's husband read it. And that was great because I got the male perspective. And he said, oh, I really like this. I like that character, Aiden, because he's very strong. Most men will like Aiden because he's strong and he's creative and he's successful. He's smart. He's right in there, right on the cusp of things. And, but he has a heart, and men are vulnerable. And we don't always think, that as a woman, we think, oh, that it's it is a man's world in many ways. And in the book, you'll see that because of her experiences. But anyway, that's how I did it. So the selection today is when he first approaches her. They've already had a few meetings, and he's going to approach her for a date and tell her where he stands with her. And so it's about 86 pages into the book. So it's they are talking to their clients. The clients are ready to move on. They're up in the area that is being renovated, which is the master bath and master bedroom area. And they leave. The husband goes off to work, and the woman goes down to get some iced tea ready for them so that when they're done their discussions of design and so forth, they can come down and have some iced tea with her. So that's where I am in the book. So this is where the husband is leaving and saying goodbye to his wife and so forth. Well, Rome wasn't built in a day, Janice, Marshall teased, chuckling at his own humor. I think I'm going to the office now. We accomplished a lot this morning, and in much less time than I thought. He shook Aiden's hand. He waved goodbye to Lila and kissed Janice on the cheek. See you at dinner, honey. Aiden's voice drowned out the faint echo of Marshall's footsteps on the staircase. I need to take some measurements. Lila, can you help me with the retractable tape? Sure. Did multi-talented Aiden really need her help? Well, I'll go downstairs and pack up the things Lila needs to take with her, Janice offered. I've scattered them all over the sunroom. I'd like to keep the entire contents of one tote. By all means, but I want to check through some things first, Lila said. I'll be down as soon as Aiden can go it alone. You two must be thirsty. I know I am. I'll get some iced tea, and for us too. That would be great. Lila knew she'd be alone with Aiden in a matter of moments, and that thought energized her voice. Once Janet was out of sight, Aiden made his way into the bathroom. He waved his hand so Lila would follow. She did so obediently, but somewhat reluctantly. She was nervous. Aiden walked to the back wall, but not before he handed her one end of the tape. She made her way to the opposite corner. Once he had measured the wall, he began to walk toward her, allowing the tape to gradually return to its housing. Lila watched him approach. His blue eyes steadily studied her face and immobilized her. He stopped less than a foot from her, pulled the end of the tape from her hand, and remained silent, perhaps only for a second or two. But to Lila, it seemed much longer. Finally, he said, "Do you really think I need your help?" Without hesitation, Lila replied, "Frankly, I thought it odd that you asked." "But you were curious?" "Yes. I want to date you." With this announcement, he went silent, stared into her eyes, and waited. Lila felt terribly awkward. What was he waiting for? Her permission? She needed to say something in order to move the conversation forward. "Well, that would be nice. What do you have in mind?" "How about dinner tonight? The restaurant in Bryn Mawr, in the old train station, around 7:30. Can we make it 8? "I can do 8, he said with a wry smile. "Then 8 it is." She glanced at the tape measure in his hand. "Do you need me anymore?" "I can do it from here." "If that's the case, I'll head downstairs and get my things together." "Well, I'll be stuck up here for a while." "Well, then I'll say goodbye now." He leaned forward. Lila waited impatiently for his kiss. She knew it was coming. When his breath touched her face, she involuntarily closed her eyes and puckered her lips. To her utter disappointment, he placed his soft kiss on her right cheek. And when she opened her eyes, he had already moved away, a triumphant smile on his face. Apparently, his game plan had worked. He lured her in, built up her expectations, and in an instant delivered what she didn't expect and less than she wanted. Why? To communicate that he was in control and she subject to his whim? Not so, the words blasted through Lila's mind. She moved toward the doorway as Aiden picked up his graph paper and began to write down his notations. She didn't look back, determined to exit as if nothing had happened.
That was great, Susan.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. So you get an idea of where they're both at. She's timid and he's such a man in control.
Yes.
So,
Well, tell me about any publicity efforts that you found that maybe worked or even those that didn't work.
okay. Well, of course, we had book parties that were organized at independent bookstores. One in the area in Wayne. It's called The Main Point, a wonderful bookstore owner and very supportive. So we had book parties. I did go with a publicity agent that Sparks Press had a list that you could choose from, and I chose a company in the Jersey area, someplace I could commute to and be in person with the people, as opposed to just an online experience. A lot. We advertised in a few publications, forward reviews, things like that, and it was it successful? I guess all the experiences were successful, but it wasn't a James Patterson publicity thing. It was local, speaking to local bookstores, sending books out for preliminary advanced readers to a bunch of different kinds of places, librarians, newspapers, magazines, that kind of stuff. But it's a very competitive field. And it sold books at bookstore read when you're reading. One very successful one was where I hired a gentleman, actually a voice artist, and we acted out a part of the book in front of the audience to bring the characters alive, and that was pretty successful. We sold a lot of books that day, but it never hit number one. It was never the number one on the New York Times list. It never was, but it's only my first, and I didn't expect it to be an international thing, although I did have it at the book fair in Frankfurt, Germany. So it went out that way. But it hasn't sold zillions of it, but it's been fun and it's been a great learning experience.
Well, absolutely. And I'm told that sometimes these books will hit a list long after their launch date. So we don't have to get in any hurry about that.
No, and in fact, I read many books that are years old, and so and enjoy them. And book clubs. Oh, one wonderful thing was going to a book club. I was the guest. My daughter-in-law was in an active book club, and she said to me, Susan, I'm going to put forth the idea that you come to the book club and talk about the book. And that was fun. And I went to the book club, and there was, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 women there. And they had bought the book and asked all these interesting questions about Aiden and everything like that, and where I got him from, and how did I come up with a kind of, well, a lot of my husband is in Aiden. A lot of my husband is in Aiden. But anyway, I believe if you can get into some book clubs and be the interviewed person, that's very helpful, because you're a person, you're a real person there, and you can talk about your experience like we are today. So.
Yes, and I think that's the one good thing that came out of the pandemic. I didn't know what Zoom was until the pandemic, and we started having all these online meetings. And now we can Zoom into book clubs all around the country and meet with them in their living rooms, and we don't have to travel. So that has helped as well.
Yes, out of sometimes bad things, good things happen, right?
True. Well, Susan, our last interview question is always about our writers over 50 being so unique. Do you have advice for writers 50 and above?
Well, I believe that it all is the story. If you have a captivating story, something to share, and it could be nonfiction, it doesn't have to just thoroughly be fiction. That is really that's what entices me to pick up a book and buy it. I buy a lot of books. I have piles of books that I go through. During the pandemic, by the way, I went on to Goodreads to keep a list of books. I read 115 books in the last 2.5 years.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. I can't believe I did that. And somewhere, and I always am committed to finishing that book. Even if in the beginning I don't like it, I know someone worked really hard writing that book, because I've been there, and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And so I'll read through the entire book, and even if I'm forcing myself, and then I sit back and I reflect on that book. It's a learning experience. Every time I read a book, I learn from that author. Whether it's the way they phrased it, or the way they structured the story, or how their sentences flowed or didn't, I learn from them. So they are my teachers. So I can't believe that I read that many. So I think that to be a good writer, you have to be an avid reader, and you have to crack open that book with a bit of respect, because that author has worked very hard to share that story with you and help you move on. Maybe though Lila is fictional, she might help someone who's going through. I did have, by the way, I remember now, a letter. Someone went to my website. That's publicity. You need to have a website. But and they expressed the fact that they had read my book, and they had just recently been widowed, and how it inspired them to maybe there is life after this terrible experience. So that is what my message is: read and write. Just read and write all the time, and then that might prove to be very satisfying.
Well, I think that's great advice for all of us. And I think that you're a very thoughtful and generous author, and to read and respect those authors that you have is very crucial to all of us. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for being with us today. And we're happy to say that you're now one of our authors over 50.
Well, I thank you so much, Julia. It's been fun.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's D-A-I-L-Y, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing. And remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.